Welcome to Ham Nation episode 547 for May 24th, 2023. Well, hello everybody. I'm Josh KI6NAZ. Welcome to Ham Nation. Did you make it home safe from Hamvention? Well, we did, or some of us did anyway, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we've got some big news for the hosts. Amanda's back, everybody. Woo!
Hi, everyone.
How are you, Amanda? Why don't you start? You kick this whole thing off for us.
This is so strange for me to kick it off. Hi. Well, I've been absent for a bit with some pneumonia problems and respiratory. And first of all, I have to thank all of our viewers. You all are awesome. All of your well wishes. I appreciate it. And it was fun to see some of you in the audience of the Ham Nation forum during Dayton Hamvention. So that was a blast to be able to see some of you in person. When I see you on the chat, of course, I never see your faces. So that was fun. And let's see, I am healing up. Still a little on the respiratory problem side, but getting better every day. I'm on oxygen still, but probably going to get released from that next week. So we're hopeful for that. Anyhow, stay tuned for the show. I'm going to be taking your questions. And what else? I'm going to be going over field day bonus points at the end of the show here to tell you how you can earn an easy 1,200 points by doing practically nothing. So
wow.
I know. Stay tuned.
Well, we're going to go out of order a little bit today because we've got two folks in the room that went to Hamvention. We'll probably wrap with us, but we'll go up to Gordo next. Gordo, how are you?
All is well, and tonight we're going to head for the ocean.
Very good. And, Don, how are you?
I'm great. It was lovely to be part of the Hamvention Forum at Dayton from Mississippi. So we're very pleased about that. We've got the Newsline report tonight and 1 week left. If you know a deserving young radio amateur who needs to be Newsline's Young Ham of the Year this year, 1 week left. Next Wednesday at midnight Eastern is the deadline. I'll tell you how to go online and get your nomination form and beat the clock.
Very good. And Joe, why don't you kick it off? What have you been up to? Well, I mean, you can talk about Hamvention, of course, and I know you're going to be talking a little bit about that later, too.
Yep, and we'll be talking about that wonderful new QMX kit and what's going into it and so forth. And I drove this year, so I actually stayed till Monday morning and then decided to try and do it all in one day. And that was fun, 14 hours and 800 miles.
Whoa, that's a long trip.
That's my trip. That's what I do in one day. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, it was rock and roll, and it was fun, and glad to not only do my forum, but Ham Nation's as well. And I'm still wearing the Ham Nation shirt here.
Very nice, very nice.
Hasn't taken it off since.
And we're going to show, this is going to be the kind of the premiere of Everybody Have Fun Tonight.
Very good. And Tom in the chat there says, thanks for the screwdriver, Joe. That's one of those cool things that you do when you're at the Ham Fest, right?
Yep. And it's a great way to recognize our viewers and the people that read my columns and so forth and everything I do, and make sure they have something in their pocket that's always helpful for kit building.
You know, it's always fun to meet the TSA agents when you go through it. I always tell people that. Put weird stuff in your bag. Tools, always good. Screwdrivers, perfect. So, Joe, bless you for keeping that long tradition going. I always get stopped at TSA. I rarely get through. There it is.
You don't have the TSA clearance thing?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Once they run my bag and it's full of 18 radios, they pull me off and they're like, "What do you think you're doing here? You got more radios than clothes."
You know what your problem is with that? Your name's not Clarence.
That's that's right. So we
That's
had the
right.
Hamvention forum. I know you guys didn't see it unless you were on site. They did have only the Zoom portion that was live stream on the Dara Ham Radio Club YouTube channel. I have the video. It has some issues. There's some weird video issues that I had throughout the show. I'm going to do my best to clean it up, and I'm going to repost it. And that includes both sides of the conversation because it was Ham Nation and Friends talk. And I called it that specifically because I had big concerns that we might have some internet issues and that we would not be able to get our fine guests over Zoom as well as we did. And I actually told Michael Coulter after the talk, I'm like, I have never had such a smooth setup on any kind of talk like that before, ever. It was, the internet was great. The monitors, these big 90-inch televisions that they had you all on were perfect. I had a roving mic, and I could switch between them easily while I was running the show. Perfect. They did a fantastic job.
And the audio,
solid from our end. It was
the audio in the
Great.
room from them was broadcast quality.
It was great.
Wow, really?
It was
good deal.
Great. So I forget the two gentlemen who helped set me up because I was kind of running around like crazy in the morning. But if you're watching, you did a fantastic job, and all the kudos goes to you. So yeah, look for that video in the future. And Christopher Walsh, thank you for the super chat. Says thanks for everything. We really do appreciate that. So
Nice.
I think we'll just get rolling with the show, and that means our first stop is going to be Gordo with the short shots. Take it away, Gordo.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Josh. And I know many of us that had the opportunity of coming up with you on stage. We loved it. So good for Dayton. They did a terrific job of the forum, and you did a great job of moderating it. Well, unfortunately, I couldn't be there live and direct. I had my Coast Guard auxiliary duties that weekend. And this coming weekend is, as you know, a big weekend for all the veterans out there. And it's Memorial Day, and the Coast Guard again has us deployed, as you can see tonight, ready for some action. So let's go aboard and see what's happening with out on the water. First of all, out on the water, you may be wondering who's got my back in case I have a real problem. Well, the United States Coast Guard has your back big time. And they are assisted by the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, of which I'm an active member. And we routinely will get calls to assist the Coast Guard. Sometimes we're finding an EPIRB, emergency position indicating radio beacon, that has accidentally activated. Other times we're looking for radio frequencies that are getting jammed by a stuck carrier. But we're out there on the watch, and our watch is, along with the Coast Guard's watch, on VHF channel 16. Now, this is right next to your 2-meter band on 146 is 2 meter. We're up at 156.8. And that channel 16 watch is critical. And the U.S. Coast Guard has a marvelous Rescue 21 system that won't miss a call to a handheld radio up to 20 plus miles at sea from the nearest shore radio system. And here is a call coming in from a mariner and guests that unfortunately their boat gave out, and it was a channel 16 call that sent the Coast Guard assets to bail them out. Now, no matter where you are along the coastlines, each of those little black areas are complete coverage of the U.S. Coast Guard on 156.8, including now all of the Mississippi River, all of the Gulf, all of the East Coast, and even some areas to the south. So it's all automated, voice over internet, and it's all backed up by U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary as volunteers to give them a backup, including if you become a member of the auxiliary, many times you're right there at their radio stations performing a watch and logging and so on. So we're an active group that is part of the Coast Guard. The latest Coast Guard improvements have been a digital call that can be made on a 156.525. It's called digital selective calling, and that reaches into the Coast Guard's network and goes all the way to Chesapeake, where they watch all around the world, all around the country. And that Chesapeake station hears all of the calls as well as all of the local distress calls coming to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard helicopter enjoys the accompaniment of ham radio operators because we're one of the few volunteer groups that during a widespread flood, such as what Don went through, Katrina, we could give the Coast Guard coordinates, latitude and longitude, whereas normal agencies would give streets. And as Don will attest, there weren't any street signs that were afloat in downtown New Orleans.
You couldn't
So
see the
ham
streets,
operating
let alone the
APRs,
signs.
a big difference. That's right, Don. And the U.S. Coast Guard has cutters stationed ready for an immediate response. Coast Guard has rigid inflatables called RIB. And these rigid inflatables can go up to 40 plus knots. They really haul on drug interdiction. And the U.S. Coast Guard works closely with local sheriff's departments that may watch a lake or a river or other busy ports of entry. Coast Guard auxiliary members have to do a lot of training before they are adopted to the auxiliary. And I'm very happy to report that if you've had, since it's coming up, veterans salute to those veterans that have given their life for us. If you've been in the service, you're able to wear those service ribbons that you originally wore 20, 30, 40 years ago, or maybe just 10 years ago. And it's really good on Memorial Day because we're going to go out and do a lot of PR work for the U.S. Coast Guard down on Fleet Week here in the South Coast. The Coast Guard auxiliary members, which we're looking for more, are civilians and retired military. And one of our most popular assets to the Coast Guard is teaching mariners how to use your radio and what's important about your radio. And these radios are like 2-meter radios. They're 25 watts. They work on 156, not 46. And they have a wideband, plus or minus 5 kilohertz. So you can tune them in easily with most ham sets. The rigid inflatable boats also have a full complement of radio systems, and we work closely with them. And we also work on high frequency, and this is where the Coast Guard really can use the help of auxiliarists that have been trained, because we can monitor some of the high frequency bands and let them know in emergency that there could be a station calling that they're not hearing on their HF radio bands. And of course, each of our setups we call a facility. We have a home facility, and here's a mobile facility that I use in working Coast Guard events. The 25-watt radios contain 55 channels, and one of the channels is for digital DSC calls. And the same radios are found aboard the big, huge vessels that are by law required to carry a marine VHF radio. Anyone that has 7 or more passengers for hire that cruises more than a few hundred yards from shore must have a marine VHF, and every 5 years it has to be inspected. And we take part in that, wearing not our Coast Guard auxiliary outfits, but our private inspector outfits for the FCC in doing VHF radio checks. And that was a fun one that drove up to the house. There's Pastor Jason Gann, a member of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, and he's about ready to do an inspection. We use the same equipment for ham as we do for marine. Yeah, you recognize that type of equipment. We're looking for power output, broken mic cords, you name it, and deviation checks and so on. This is another thing that assists the Coast Guard to make sure that those vessels required by law to carry a radio, that the radio is operating up to specs. And Oh, wow. Look at this. We found this on one radio setup, not on a compulsory equipped vessel, but a private vessel. A ham, I'm sad to say, hooked up 2 radios to 1 antenna, and he was surprised after he transmitted on the marine radio that his ham 2-meter radio no longer worked. Well, that kind of splitter is not a splitter that would keep the RF energy going
Just
in the
no.
correct.
Just no.
The digital calling depends on everybody getting a maritime mobile service identity number called an MMSI, and it's not a hard job to do to get that number. It goes into the Marine VHF, and when that VHF is hooked up to a Marine GPS, bingo, you get latitude, longitude, and so on. Plus, automatic identification service would allow us to immediately see a nearby vessel that is in distress or possibly someone overboard. And mariners, we teach them this distress button is great for alerting all that you're in trouble, including all those vessels right around you. That sure beats a cell phone that you only talk to the party you're calling. No one else knows 20 feet away that you're in trouble. Well, with the Coast Guard Rescue 21 system and the VHF radio, you see it to the port of the steering wheel there, we're ready to go. The Coast Guard no longer guards 2182 just because of the noise and the complexity of the gear, but Coast Guard auxiliary members do monitor 2182 from their home stations. But for those of you that enjoy hearing the action, go to upper sideband and tune in 4125 kilohertz, or on upper sideband 8122 kilohertz. And many times you'll hear the Coast Guard, the big nav stations, communicating with cutters and the vessel in distress, all on marine single sideband. And every week, for those of you into computers, we need to do our Olivia as well as MT63 digital work. And here we pass messages to the Coast Guard. And this helps relieve the Coast Guard during a real event drill of any activity that they may have missed that we can be able to provide for them. And new devices coming onto the marine scene are the man overboard devices, and they too will signal on channel 88 digital as well as channel 72 digital, and that's part of digital selective calling and automatic identification system. And these systems will alert mariners all around them that there's someone in the water in distress or a vessel in distress. So we're always looking for more Coast Guard auxiliary members that want to join and take an active part with the U.S. Coast Guard, and you do so at the flotilla level. So encourage all of you that if you've been in the military or you would like to be a part of a military group, think about the U.S. Coast Guard, because the U.S. Coast Guard really needs ham radio operators to help teach and help inspect those vessels at the launch ramp that may have a radio, but a mariner without a clue how to use the radio. And here's the shocking thing. There is no federal test, no state test to become a mariner and go out sailing. You can go out there with no knowledge of anything and indeed get in trouble. So we try and educate the public. California does have a state licensing to ensure that someone knows something aboard the boats, but it's a long time coming, and that's where the auxiliary and volunteers make a difference. And that's what we're doing tonight, going off to a meeting and volunteering. So Amanda, I'll leave it over to you to dredge up, nautical term, any questions that we may have about joining the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Fantastic, Gordo. Thank you. And people were asking questions that you started to answer as you were taught. They wanted to know what frequencies they were using on HF, things like that. But Josh, do you mind going back to the slideshow and going back about 2 pictures? Right there. That's that. Yep. That one. This is such a cool thing, everybody. So this shows you all the different kind of boats, ships, everything that are out there in the ocean. So like the pink ones are your luxuries or your personal. Yellow is something, I think, red is oil, and green is maybe fish. I can't remember. but this is a really cool website, and it's marine traffic or something like that. And basically, this is the same thing as if you use flight radar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is ADS-B for boats, right?
Neat.
You're right on target, Amanda. Marinetraffic.com.
Okay.
And everybody can bring it up, and you're never alone out on the ocean. And marinetraffic.com is there to serve in case we need to divert a nearby vessel to another vessel calling for help. Amanda?
I know, and I found this so fascinating only because I'm part still teenager, so I find it really cool to track where the luxury, like the super yachts are, the mega yachts are, and you can
That's
see them in
cool.
cans and at cans and stuff like that, or at Ibiza Island. And so you find all kinds of crazy ships out there, and this is just it's really cool. And you can track it by boat, so you can type in the boat name, or you can type in so if there's a celebrity or a billionaire out there like Jeff Bezos or something that you want to follow, you get to find out where they are in the ocean. It's pretty dang cool. So
That's
anyhow,
wild.
I know. So even the Russian oligarchs, you can find their yachts
Oh,
and,
neat.
and where they're at, and they're all docked out of like Turkey right now. But I find
Oh,
it pretty
sure, yeah.
fascinating. So thank you, Gordo, for bringing that part in. And it's still all radio based, right? So
Uh,
it's just another faction of it. Go ahead, Gordo.
Nope, that's it, Amanda. It's definitely radio based, and they're really looking for more licensed ham radio operators, especially those that can take part with automatic identification service, as well as those that can then relay calls to the Coast Guard that maybe they hear on 14.300.
Gordo, mention those two HF frequencies again, the 4 megahertz and the 8 megahertz frequencies to be listening on.
Say again, Don. Little interference here. Go
Oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry. I said mention the two frequencies, the two HF frequencies. There we go, 4125 and 8122. That's what I wanted to.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are the two frequencies that are most often with United States Coast Guard and Coast Guard
Gotcha.
auxiliary traffic. And you'll
Now-
hear some distress calls on those occasionally.
One
And those
more
are upper
question.
sideband, right? Upper sideband.
Right, all upper sideband.
One more question. Any of us can be on there. We could talk on there no matter what. We don't have to have a special license, correct?
On the marine channels for a shore station on the Coast Guard's national telecom channels, NTIA channels, you do need authorization from your Coast Guard auxiliary
Okay.
unit. And on those marine channels, the 2, 4, 6, and 8, and 12, you would need a coast station license. But in an emergency, you are permitted, in an emergency, life and death, to be able to take a call if no one else is responding to a station in distress.
Okay.
But-
So we
Very cool.
need to make sure that now, viewers, you may not just go on there and BS or rag chew. Please don't
Right.
do that.
right.
One thing I'd like to mention is, Josh, you had a program on Ham Radio Crash Course with Ray Novak recently from the NMEA show that was
Yes.
talking all about the ICOM marine radios, and he went into great
yeah.
detail on
Yeah.
how those are used. So if you have not seen that on Ham Radio Crash Course, go check it out, because I was I mean, I had a boat, I had a marine radio, a little VHF, had a handheld and a small mounted unit as well on my little inboard
Yeah.
outboard boat. I didn't have any big HF or anything, because I didn't. It was just a 17-foot boat. I didn't need it, but
Right.
it was very fascinating, and I learned a lot, because just that was back in the 80s and 90s that I was doing that, and
Mhm.
the technology has advanced so much since then.
I
So,
found the
yeah,
whole
it's
thing
pretty good.
fascinating, and we plan on doing something like that again, but also incorporate land mobile radio, which is another
Yeah.
large
Yeah.
market with ICOM.
Right.
LMR.
We did
Mhm.
we did get another question. It was from
Okay.
KA2AUB asked, what modes do the marine radios use for HF? So I think you might have
Okay.
mentioned them along that whole thing, but why don't you just nail them in one shot?
Yeah, the marine radios on VHF are on regular FM plus or minus 5 kilohertz. On single sideband, it's all upper sideband. So on marine VHF, any ham radio can go to receive. They don't transmit up there unless modified. And the Coast Guard says you can't use a ham set on marine VHF. Still, the marine VHF service is easy to tune in with any VHF ham radio, handheld or marine radio calls.
You mentioned
And
Olivia, and so Olivia would be upper sideband then if you're doing digital modes, right?
That's one of the 5 digital modes that the Coast Guard Auxiliary use back to some of the command centers. And these are on NTIA 5 megahertz frequencies that I can't disclose the frequency, but if you go to 5 megs in the afternoon and evening, just tune from 5 WWV up a little higher and you'll bump into a lot of military agencies and digital.
cool.
What were you going to say?
And if you're a boater, I highly recommend taking a Coast Guard Auxiliary safe boating class.
That's it.
It could save your life. I took it, and the knowledge that I gleaned just from the course. We were on my father-in-law's boat out night shrimping, and my brother-in-law was sitting out on the fantail, and unfortunately the little test trawl fell out. In the boat, fell out of the back of the boat as we were running, and the line twisted around his ankle, and off he went.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
We got him back on. He's got a little arthritis in that ankle, but some of the knowledge that I think from the safe boating class helped us get him back on board and everything else. So yeah, if you have a boat, you need to take that Coast Guard Auxiliary safe boating class.
That's a great idea. I've done quite a bit of boating just on lakes in my lifetime. And one time we sunk a boat because it had holes in it and it kind of took on some water. But then the whitecaps came over and really sunk the boat. And I was 8 and my dad said, "You have to swim to shore now." After that, I had no fear of water. Then
here's a pro tip that they'll teach you. Here's the first thing they'll teach you. So here's a free tip from the Coast Guard Auxiliary safe boating class. Step 1, screw in the drain plug.
That's right.
Do you know that's how many people they do sink their boats because they forget to put in that
Get the drain plug.
damn drain plug.
Right.
Yeah. Now after that, Jeff and I were out on the lake and the winds came up and our anchor broke loose and then our engine wouldn't start, our motor wouldn't start, and so we started going towards the dam and
Oh no.
again white caps and a little 16-footer, and
We had
a Cobra radio, so we could call the marina. And
we had an engine failure coming in. I broke a water line, and the bilge started filling up with water from the water pump of the boat, of the engine, which of course means it wasn't cooling, and it blew out the bellows for the outdrive. And we were making a lot of smoke and taking on a lot of water. And when the engine seized, I got on the marine radio and I hollered Mayday on 16 right in front of a crew boat that was heading out to the he was coming out of the channel and heading out to the up to the oil rigs. And as soon as I yelled Mayday, he was bound by law to render assistance. He wasn't happy about it, but he did it. He towed us into the dock.
That's
we
exactly
gave
it.
him every cent that the 3 of us had on our bodies. We put in a baggie with and threw it onto the deck of his boat and waved him and said thank you very much. So
Yeah, it's such a scary situation. So yes, take a boat, and you know what? That doesn't mean that emergencies aren't going to happen to you, because I think more people. I can't watch chat right now because I'm looking at the camera, but
right.
I think everyone can agree they've had more incidents with boating than anything else in the world.
Just be prepared.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
Thank you, Gordo, for the excellent segment there. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we're going to take a word from ICOM.
Indeed.
Aim higher and discover the world of SHF. Explore the world of microwave with ICOM's new SHF portable, the IC905. This all-mode rig covers 144 to 5600 megahertz and with the optional CX10G transverter, 10 gigahertz. This portable also has a few industry firsts under its belt. The IC905 is the first radio to support the 5 major bands, VHF to SHF, a power over Ethernet RF module for flexible installation, and is compatible with amateur TV in analog FM mode. Other features include large 4.3-inch color LCD touchscreen, real-time high-speed spectrum scope and waterfall display, easy digital mode settings, included high-performance GPS antenna, full D-Star functions, including DV and DD mode, and SD memory card slot. For more information about ICOM's amateur offerings, visit icomamerica.com/amateur. From May 19th through May 21st, hams can find ICOM at booth 2608 at Dayton Hamvention 2023 in Xenia, Ohio.
And oh, that's the wrong one right there, isn't it? I got so excited by the marine radio. And I hope you did go to the ICOM booth, because that's actually where we kicked off the Hamvention Challenge. We hinted at it when we were last on Ham Nation that we were doing something very special. And with another ham and I, who I can say is KM4ACK, who's out here on YouTube, we put together a series of challenges, which ultimately led to a winner doing an RDF of a beaconish thing that we hid. I won't tell you anything more than that. You got to come to this Saturday's live stream on the Ham Radio Crash Course, my channel. Jason is going to be on with me. We're going to talk about the whole thing, but the winner got a 7,300. So big thank you to ICOM, not just for sponsoring this show, Ham Nation, but doing everything you do for amateur radio and continuing to support crazy ideas that Jason KM4ACK comes up with, and I step in a little bit to help. So again, we thank you for everything you do. And another thing they do is every time we're live, if you click that little Enter Now button on the website, you could potentially win one of 3 swag packs. And the winner for this episode are Ryan G, K4TXN, Brian W, WB6BW, Justin T, KN6YNI, and then every month they give away a radio. Now, I think the website might be outdated, or I just have an old cache of it, but this month they gave away an ICOM ID 5100, and the winner of that was Lisa M. So that seems like a little bit of time just to click that little Enter Now button and potentially win some swag, and once a month, maybe even win a radio. So make sure you go check out icomamerica.com/Ham Nation, and the link for that is in the description, so check that out. Alrighty then. Before we talk more about, well, we're going to go to Dawn, but before we talk more about Hamvention, we're going to find out the news update from Amateur Radio Newsline.
Yeah, let's do that. But first, I want to remind you, though, that every year, Amateur Radio Newsline does the Young Ham of the Year award. It was the brainchild and the pet project of Bill Pasternak, WA6ITF, which that's his license plate right there over my shoulder. Anyway, the nominations are run from March through May every year, and now we have 1 week left. So
1 week.
There's the website. There's a button on there called Awards. If you click on that Awards tab, it will take you to the 2023 Young Ham of the Year nomination form, where you download that and fill that out and email it back into us. Email submissions only. They have to be emailed. It's right there. It's AR Newsline or newsline@arnewsline.org is the email address, by midnight Eastern on the 31st of May, which is 1 week from today. Tell us in depth about your nominee, and hopefully we will see him or her live 3 months from now, as a matter of fact, at the Huntsville Ham Fest, the third weekend in August. It's exactly 3 months after Dayton. So go online, grab your nomination form, and fill it out, and let's celebrate youth and amateur radio and the excellence thereof, because that is the future, as we know. Now, let's go ahead and get to the news of the week from Amateur Radio Newsline. That's the wrong one.
What happened there? So hold on 1 second.
I don't know. That's the wrong one. That's the.
It's okay.
I put the new one in there.
Let's see.
And I even checked it.
Nope. All right. Well, we'll be editing this part out of the video, so everybody gets to see a little bit of the raw live. I'll throw back to Don for some soft shoe while I make sure I've got the right file.
Don.
Don
Yes,
and I
Don-
can talk.
Don Gordo, do you want to
Yes,
give
sir.
any tips about how to feed the alligators?
Well, you and I both know about the same amount because we were both on that swamp tour all those years ago. Yeah, alligators like marshmallows, but you want to make sure you throw them because they like meat with their marshmallows too. So you want to be careful. That was a fun time, Gordon. God, think about how Tyler was a baby back then.
He
You think about
was.
it. Yeah, wow.
Let's see.
Josh,
if
you
I
have the
got
right
it.
piece of.
We're going to test it right now. So let's see. I think I got it.
From Amateur Radio Newsline Report, number 2,377. This is Ham Nation Headlines for Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. It's that time of year again when amateurs check out their equipment and get ready for a new season of storms and storm-related activities.
This is especially important for such stations as WX4NHC at the National Hurricane Center in Florida. Their annual on-the-air communications test will take place on Saturday, May 27th from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The purpose of the event is to test the station's equipment and antennas as well as operators' home equipment prior to the 2023 hurricane season, which runs from June 1st through November 30th. The station will be operating on HF, VHF, and UHF, including 2 and 30-meter APRS and WinLink. Bobby Graves, KB5HAV, net manager of the Hurricane WatchNet, told AR Newsline that they will be active during that time, on or near their standard frequencies of 14.325 and 7.268 megahertz, depending on propagation. The VoIP Hurricane Net will activate that day too, from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Look for WX4NHC on the air or post it on DX Cluster. This is Randy Sly, W4XJ.
There's antenna work, and then there's antenna work. And if your antenna is a folding antenna that won't unfold, and it's out in space, you're going to need to do a little more than just climb up the tower to fix it.
With the launch last month of the European Space Agency's JUICE mission, short for Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, hopes were high for its antenna, which had been folded up inside the spacecraft, ready for its eventual full deployment. The 16-meter-long antenna, known as RIME, that for Radar for Icy Moons Exploration, was to completely unfold in its first week after the launch date, and it did, that is, all but one final part. According to various media accounts, a variety of remedies were tried without success until the flight control team finally freed the remaining part by delivering a shock that moved a tiny stuck pin that had left the antenna section jammed in its folded position. The shock came via a device known as a non-explosive actuator that was located inside the bracket. What happened was disruptive enough to shake things up. May 12 brought freedom as the stuck part became unstuck. Now the antenna should be ready for an even bigger challenge, the moons around the giant planet Jupiter. The mission will use the antenna to study those icy moons as far down as 9 kilometers, analyzing both the surface and subsurface. What unfolds there may possibly deliver some shocks of its own. This is Graham Kemp, VK4BB.
Still with space radio, a popular ham radio satellite launched a little less than 8 years ago from China has left its orbit.
Satellite enthusiasts have one fewer satellite to rely on now. The orbit has decayed for the popular linear transponder satellite known as XW-2A. The satellite was sent into space in September of 2015 from China's Taiyuan Satellite Launch Center. The satellite does not leave space without sharing a little bit of glory. In August of 2022, two amateurs used XW-2A to achieve communication over a record distance for the 25 kg microsat. It was a transatlantic QSO between EA4 and F in Spain and VE1 CWJ in Nova Scotia, a memorable distance of 4,751 kilometers. This is Stephen Kinford, N8WB.
The nominating period for the 2023 Amateur Radio Newsline Bill Pasternak WA6ITF Young Ham of the Year Award closes at midnight Eastern Wednesday, May 31st. You'll find more information and the nominating form on our website, arnewsline.org, under the Awards tab. We'll present the award in August at the Huntsville Hamfest in Alabama. And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news since 1976 at arnewsline.org. With Randy Sly, W4XJ, Graham Kemp, VK4BB, Stephen Kinford, N8WB, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wilbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.
And thank you very much to the Newsline crew. We do not have Tamitha with us tonight. She was busy taking care of some family commitments, but of course you can follow her on her Twitter feed, which is at Tamitha Scove, and also spaceweatherwoman.com, and her YouTube video, YouTube channel, Tamitha Scove. Don't forget, go to arnewsline.org, grab the 2023 Young Ham of the Year nominating form, and let us continue the tradition that Bill Pasternak started years and years and years ago, and celebrating and honoring youth in amateur radio. And someone who's always been a big part of that has been Joe Eisenberg, K0NEB, because CQ Communications is one of the corporate sponsors. And of course, Joe writes for CQ. And while we're mentioning our corporate sponsors, let's also mention Radio Waves Antennas, great friends of Amateur Radio Newsline. Also, Heil Sound. We mentioned CQ Communications. Also, Yazoo USA. We could not do that. Do the Young Ham of the Year award without them. Anyway, Joe, it's that's how you and I got to be friends, I believe, was through Bill Pasternak and the Young
Yes,
Ham
we did.
and everything else, and a fruitful friendship it has been.
Yes, it has. And I still do the photography every year for the Young Ham, and looking forward to doing that as well. Well, we're going to talk about hamvention a bit. But Josh gets to do the honors because we're going to show everybody have fun tonight. And so I always try to pick a fun song for it, and I think we have a winner this year. So Josh, let's see if you've got it queued up and ready to rock and roll.
Drive a million miles to be with you tonight. So if you're feeling low, turn up your radio. The words we use are strong, they make reality. But now the music's on. Well, baby, dance with me. Yeah.
That's just brilliant.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
You know, Richard from MFJ is one of the most outstanding people I know in the field of antennas, and that's exactly where he should be, outstanding in a field of antennas.
It's always fun to catch him when I do these shows.
Yeah, just him being Richard.
Yeah, and actually catching a lot of people just being naturally fun at Hamvention. And I'm going to show just a couple of pictures here.
What it's
Let
all
me
about.
see if I can do this. There we go. And this is to kind of explain a couple of the pictures in the slideshow. Let's see if that comes up.
Yep.
And what you're looking at is Hans, and he is the brilliant mind behind QRP Labs. And what you're going to see in the next picture is 3 kits. The one on the right is the QCX Mini, which is about 4 or 5 watt CW transceiver. And by the way, I have built all these except for the new QMX, and the instructions, like I said, were just uploaded maybe an hour or so before airtime here. So I have not had a chance to start on it yet. The kit in the middle is the QDX, and that is an SDR-based digital modes transceiver. And I use that when I did summits and parks on the air when I went to Branson, and it worked wonderful. Got lots of QSOs on FT8. The one on the left looks just like the one on the right. And guess what? It looks like it, but it's not. It's actually like if you put the two right kits together, you're going to get that. And what it is it's a fully synthesized SDR based, but has a regular tuning dial type receiver transmitter. It is a CW and digital modes combined transceiver.
Wow.
But you're going to love this. The firmware will be coming out in a while that will allow you to do single sideband on it. In fact, when you assemble it, you're putting a microphone in that, and you can use it like a walkie-talkie, the one on the left. And it will run on anything from 12, actual 12 volts, not 13.8, 12 down to 9 or 8 volts or so.
5 bands.
And yeah, it's
Very
going to
cool.
be everything from 80, 60, 40, 30, and 20 meters.
Wow.
And you're going to get 5 watts out of it. And I'm really looking forward to it. The toroids are tiny. And
What is that about? Is that like about the size of like an old school Motorola pager or something?
A little bit bigger.
What it looks
Yes.
like? Yeah, it looks bigger.
I'd
Yeah.
say it's the size of a big deck of cards,
Okay.
basically.
Okay.
It's not very big at all, and it has the LCD display in there.
Yeah.
While the QDX required the radio to tell it what frequency it was operating on, this one you can dial it as well as use the radio to do things. It's or the computer, I mean, to determine what frequency you're on. It's an absolutely amazing kit. The toroids are tiny, and so that's going to be a challenge. I think they're really, really tiny, and
Yes.
and there's a couple of binocular ones in there, and so it's going to be a challenge. But of course, being the kit builder, I've got to do this. And just think of making a Go kit in a small, like a Pelican thing or something, or even smaller, that's nice and watertight and so on. You could travel with that and a little 3 amp hour BioEnno battery pack, and you could put a headset in there or a connection to hook up your computer to it. Absolutely amazing kit, and it was $115 including the case.
Wow.
And when you think about what you're getting, especially when they get the single sideband mode going, I think this is going to be a remarkable kit. And at first I thought, well, the crowd was pretty big around him and stuff. And I thought, well, maybe I'll wait because I thought he'd run out right away. But the next day he told me, he says, I've got lots more in the booth. And so I went over there and I had to pick one up, of course, and Josh did too.
I did.
And so we'll have to compare serial numbers. This is the DZ kit that I had built here at home, and that was on display in the DZ kit booth. I brought it with me, and I thought he was going to keep it. And then he said, no, I've got some mods I want you to try on this. So I brought it back home with me, and we'll be talking about some of the mods and improvements in that kit as well. The crowd, I would say, was definitely up over last year, because last year the food lines were maybe 1 or 2 or 3 deep. And this year there were more food trucks and longer lines and lots more people there, but the buildings weren't as packed tight as they usually are. And that's because the weather was wonderful. The only rain we got was on Friday night, overnight, and it was raining when I got there at 7:30, but by 9 o'clock when the gates opened, the sun was out and the lots weren't muddy or anything, so you didn't have to park in the remote lots if you didn't want to, but a lot of people did. The variety of food, like I said, was a lot more than in past years. And there was no complaints about it. That's probably one of the best things. Guess who was back? Kenwood. Yeah, and they were showing the new what was that, THD 75?
Correct.
Is the new version of the old 74. Looks kind of like it, but obviously, it has some improvements and so on. They didn't have all the full specs yet. All they had was a unit in a glass case. So I did take home a brochure on it, but we don't know a heck of a lot more on it until it gets approval to be marketed and we start getting it in our hot little hands. And for those of us who like QRP and stuff, Quirky QRP makes some interesting antennas, and he was beta testing an HF handy-talkie type antenna. He's using a Elecraft KX2 with the mic and speaker in the case that's built in, and he's got this new kind of fancy loaded kind of rubber duck. I think he said it was on 20. So he was walking around. I don't know who he was talking to on the other end, but kind of an interesting way of using a KX2 as a walkie-talkie. And he is not marketing that antenna yet, but it is coming out. So that is the photos I have besides the slideshow. I'm sure there are a lot of questions maybe about the slides. I can tell you that I use a Sony full frame mirrorless camera, and it's an Alpha 7 Series 3. And I think it does a lot better job than the older Canon I had before. And so you can see the colors on the photos and everything are pretty sharp.
What glass do you run? What kind of lenses there?
I'm using the 24 to 70 primarily, and I also have a fixed 50 millimeter f1.8.
Ooh, there you go.
There, nice.
Great job.
I didn't bring the telephoto, which is 70 to 200, I think it is. I did not bring that because you really don't need the telephoto at this. It's not like an air show or something. But it's a lot of fun to do this, and I apologize to all those who aren't in this slideshow, but you never know. I might come up with a second show like I did last time, so you never know.
I'm sure you have enough pictures to do it.
Yes, I do.
Oh, I bet.
And I'll tell you what, it was absolutely kind of stunning to me how many people, Josh, as you saw, rose their hands when I asked how many of you have built a kit because of my presenting it and giving hints and tips on how to do it correctly. And I was surprised, like you saw, how many people raised their hands. I'm just thankful for the audience out there, both in person and online. And you see me at a ham fest, you might get a screwdriver.
Yeah, I learned a couple of things this go around. I'm always changing up my video stuff. Like I've been live streaming on my phone for a while. This is the first year that I went like full crazy, and I actually used my DSLR HDMI'd into a device to get it into my iPad. So I was literally walking around two-handed with all this stuff. I ended up buying a new lens just to be able to get better video next time, something with a wider aperture for some more light coming in kind of thing. But
Sweet.
yeah, I'm pretty excited. Huntsville is going to be awesome for that. But a couple of things. I'm going to go ahead and show the overhead desk here for a second. There's my S-Bit X, which you guys know that I did the S-Bit X videos on my channel. Well, this is the new model, which you probably saw in my 4 Days in May live stream. And just for, I grabbed this really quick. Joe says, have you ever been influenced to do a kit? And it's absolutely that FM receiver that he talked about. I bought I don't know how many of these I bought. I gave a bunch away. I love this little project. Good project. There's the QDX, about the size of my hand.
I was his first QSO on his QDX when he
Really?
built it. Remember?
Yeah. And there's the QCX. You can see it's just in the palm of my hand. So this is what the QMX, it's the same size.
Okay.
But basically it takes, if you think about it, the QCX, which is a one band CW transmitter, and you take the QDX, so you take both of them together, right, like this, cram both of the functionality of these, add 5 bands, and get it back to this size for
That's crazy.
$115 with the case. $115
That's
with the case.
insane.
Amazing.
Yeah. The main circuit board in there is a 6-layer board, by the way.
Oh my
Lord.
goodness,
Oh
that's
my
insane.
God.
And then Joe,
And-
we'll compare numbers. I'm 110.
And I am 138.
There you go.
I didn't know we compared numbers.
Oh yeah,
It's like the Elecraft guys when they
that's
first
yeah.
right.
started out,
That's
they
right.
had their numbers on their shirt, their serial numbers on their shirts.
And I am planning on being in Huntsville. I already got my plane ticket, so I'm
Me
ready
too.
to rock and
Okay.
roll.
I will be there.
All right.
right.
Well, everybody, I'm going to take off because
Yes.
Jeff's going to, by the way, we're operating W1AW Portable Zero this week. So listen up for Colorado and get us in your logs. Our goal is to be better than the bottom part of how many QSOs other states have gotten and just fall in the middle somewhere. If we can be the best, we will be. But Joe, I know Nebraska had a pretty good standing there. So he has W1AW operations, and he has to sit right here in this chair and use this microphone to make those happen. And he has to start in 2 minutes. So love you all. Thank you for welcoming me back. And stay tuned for the Nets, and everyone else is going to talk about that. And I'll say 7-3. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Amanda. It's great to see
Good night,
you. We're
Amanda.
glad to have you
Thank
back. And
you.
glad to hear you doing well. So thank you, everybody.
Me
who
too.
supported, Amanda
right.
and everything. So bye,
7-3.
Amanda.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so we'll mention Nets then. All right, so we've got D-Star on 14 Charlie. Kevin, KC5 FPF, will be on 40 meters, likely on 7.192 megahertz. And K7 UDI will be on 20 meters, 14.268, or possibly on 75 meters, which I don't know the frequency. Does anybody remember what the 75 meter frequency is?
I can't think of it.
No.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's going to be the show for everybody today. I got a bit of a special. Somebody asked, "What's the duck about?" In that in your pictures there. I've got the website pulled up if you want me to.
Yeah,
to
there's
pull
a
up the
lady
QRZ.
who has 3 ducks at home,
Mm-hmm.
and she's really big on parks on the air. And she told me she's worked me a couple times. I guess I hadn't realized I worked her. So
Yeah, so this is N1DUC, and the
Of
duck
course it is.
and the duck that was in Joe's video or pictures there is named Mochi. And I will let me see if I can do this really quickly here.
Mochi.
Oh, wow.
That's so cool.
There's me with Mochi on my lap.
That's a well-behaved duck.
This duck was pretty nice. I did get nipped at a couple of times, but was, I think, very well mannered for a duck. I don't know how many pet ducks you've seen in your life, but I thought Mochi did a pretty good job.
Not
there.
many.
So yeah, it was very nice to be able to hang out with Mochi for a minute. They went all over the show with Mochi. It was drinking water out of a cup, and Mochi was having
Wow.
a good old time. So
We
yeah.
have a mated pair of ducks on the property here. They hang around the pond, and I think they may have eggs, or I think there may be some ducklings out there now. But I got to tell you something. The male, he sticks by the female
Yeah.
like glue and watches her. And you should see him going after the dog. It's so funny because Nola gets out there and she wants to play with the duck, and he's having no part of it, and he chases her down. It's the funniest thing.
I saw the videos you sent me. That was
Yeah.
that was pretty good. Well, everybody, I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for watching Ham Nation. Do you guys have anything you want to hit up before we wrap things up, before we go here?
The Young Ham of the Year.
Absolutely.
And,
ARnewsline.org.
my slideshow is on my YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/Joe Husker, JoeHusker.
I am going to try and pull that up as fast as I can. I think I got it. Let's see if I got it. Hold on. Oh, and now it's going slow. This is definitely you, Joe. I found it. So I'm going to drop the link so you guys can all see that. So go check out Joe, and you can see all of his videos that he's done. Looks like a ton of really cool stuff. All right. Anything else, Gordo, Dawn, you want to mention?
That's just the Young Ham of the Year. And, of course, go check out Dr. T at her Twitter and YouTube and on spaceweatherwoman.com.
Excellent. Gordo?
And Fleet Week all this weekend, especially for our veterans. We'll see you out there in uniform.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you all in 2 weeks. So 2 Wednesdays from today. Make sure you click that bell and subscribe if you haven't on YouTube so you get notified whenever I post a video or go live. And every other Wednesday is going to be Ham Nation on.
And check out that Ray Novak Marine Radio video on Ham Radio Crash Course. It's really good.
I loved
really
it.
Good.
Knowing radio, I told Ray this, and I think I put it in the video. Knowing radio, I walked in like, oh, I know some of this stuff. I was so taken aback by how cool the integration that they have with technology in marine radio and electronics.
I was having fun watching you learn.
I was geeking out. It was awesome.
Yeah, you were. It was good stuff.
Well, we'll just say 73 to everybody until we talk to you again. All right. See you later.
All right. There it is. The Marine
73.
Radio.
There it is.